These are tough questions. Like, if a couple pulled these out on me in our first meeting, I would have to pause for a second and think about my answer to make sure it sounds okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Hitched and Happy. I have a guest with me today, and he is a fellow wedding photographer, but he is based in Winnipeg. His name is Joel Boyle. Hello, Joel. How's it going?
How's it going, Jesse? I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Good morning.
So I want to know a little bit about you and what you do and why you're into photography.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm a wedding photographer. I also do some family and commercial stuff, but so it's my wife and I. We are a husband and wife duo. We shoot most of our weddings together. Our company's called Black and Gold Photography. We've been doing this since I guess you could say 2010, but really 2016, 2018, in that range, we started working together, like actually shooting weddings together. And that's when we kind of decided that this is something we wanted to pursue full time. I launched CanadianWeddingPhotographers.com, and it's a directory for couples looking for a photographer. But really, it's meant to be a community that really celebrates the artist and the art behind wedding photography. I think there's not a lot of wedding photographers that get into this industry as just a business decision. We're usually very passionate about what we do. There wasn't really something for Canadians where we could feel like this is ours. We can call it ours. We can celebrate each other, inspire each other, communicate with each other. And then of course, the site itself acts as a directory for finding members. We have the Canadian Wedding Photography Awards. So this is a contest that runs every 2 months. It's an image contest where members can submit their photos, and then there's a public voting system, so everybody can kind of choose their favorites. And what ends up happening is photographers get awarded Photographer of the Year at the end of the year, or Photographer of their province, that kind of thing. Just further celebrating excellence in our field, and hopefully clients are seeing that too, and maybe discovering photographers outside of their own city that they might not have been aware of.
And if you're a photographer, you can still go and join and become part of the community,
Course,
right?
yeah.
You're always taking new members.
Of course.
And then if you are a bride, you can use that website to find and connect with Canadian wedding photographers, and you can search by province.
Correct. Yeah, you can even search by budget too. What's nice about the search function is it'll actually show you photographers who are willing to travel to your province. So again, that just opens the pool of potential photographers that as a couple you might not have even considered, and it might not even be that much of an extra cost. So it opens up the potential for couples and photographers connecting.
Okay, so what we are going to be talking about today, since we are both wedding photographers, we are going to be talking about the questions that you need to be asking your wedding photographer when you are looking for your wedding photographer before you have hired them. And these are not going to be your typical questions. These are definitely more in-depth, intimate questions that you probably have not thought of. And these questions make me very excited. If a couple asked me these questions, I would actually be like, wow, you are really doing your research here. And also it sounds like you really care about who photographs your wedding, and you want to have a good connection and relationship with them as well.
I find no fault on couples, you do a Google search, you're trying to figure out how to make sure you're making the right choice. It's a big choice. So you find the Pinterest lists where it's, 10 questions to ask your wedding photographer, and it's, do you have a backup camera? Just kind of these simple base level questions. I understand where the question's coming from. It's coming from I just want to ask anything to help me feel that I can trust you. But I'm hoping what couples are coming to me asking these types of questions where I know they've already seen, they already have a respect for what I do. They have at least a base level trust that I am a serious photographer, where we can get past those base level things like what kind of camera do you use, and ask things like what we're going to touch on today. And there's nothing wrong with asking those questions. It's just if those are the only questions, there should be a lot more. And why don't we just dive right into them, and we can kind of touch on that, hey? First question is, why do you shoot weddings? I think it's a very simple question that I never get asked, and I would love it if couples would. The why to ask that question is just to see if they have an answer. Everybody will have an answer. And hopefully it's more than, well, weddings are they pay X amount or they're
Yeah.
consistent. You want to be hearing, you want to see a photographer's eyes light up saying like, oh my God, thank you for asking. Like,
Yes.
I love this, 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 and this, right? Like if somebody asks me, why do I shoot weddings? For me, as somebody who really loves photography, you know, a big reason is a wedding day. It exercises every form of photography in one day.
It does.
It's product photography, it's a photojournalism, it's portraiture, it's sport photography when you're chasing kids. When I hear a couple ask that kind of question, that shows me that they're really engaged in finding somebody that's going to just not just show up and shoot.
Yeah.
It shows me that they care, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to build with my couples too. I don't just want to show up and be their photographer. I want to be with them every step of the way and have meetings before the wedding and get to know them before the wedding, so then I can like customize their wedding day experience for them. And I think that's a really good question. I often get asked like, how long have you been doing this? But I never get asked why. And I would say for me, it's more connected to just family and understanding how important moments are to capture with family, because there's so many photos in my own life and in my own family that I'm so thankful someone took, because the people in those photos are not there anymore. Hold on, I'm gonna move my cat. I moved this plant here as
all
set
good.
deck, and now she thinks it's her plant to destroy. So that's just gonna be funny if the whole podcast Susie's just in the background eating a plant.
I think it's entertaining.
Okay, let's move on to question 2. What are your favorite and least favorite moments to shoot at a wedding? Which I think is a very interesting question to ask a wedding photographer. Like, what's your least favorite thing about your job, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of opens up the door to see if they're honest. Let's say we're doing a client meeting and you're kind of just saying anything to get the wedding, and you
Yeah.
can't really, like, you know, like as somebody, I personally would sniff something out weird if they're like, oh no, I love absolutely everything. That's probably not true.
Yeah.
Wedding photography is, it's a difficult job. There's hard parts, you know, shooting in crazy weather can be really tricky. Sometimes, like, you know, trying to gather family for family photos and you're running out of time, that kind of, like, there are parts that I think we can be open about, like, these are challenges. Doesn't necessarily mean you don't like it, but I would love to hear that question from a couple, because it would give me a chance to tell them again, like, why I love weddings. So for me, it's, you know, speeches are one of my favorite things to shoot. And also, depending on your day and what you're really, what's really important to you, you might be able to find out if a photographer is right for you or not. You know, if a photographer doesn't like, I'm trying to think of an example here, but doesn't
Well,
like...
if you really like detail shots, if you want those like flat lay detail shots, I know some photographers do not like doing that. So if that's an important shot for you to capture, and your photographer doesn't enjoy that part, then there you go.
Yeah.
So question 3, we have, what kind of light do you prefer to shoot in? Which I love this question, because I think when I started out in photography, I thought to like be seen as professional, I just had to like be able to make any lighting situation work. But I quickly learned that you have to manipulate the light in the situation to work for your photo.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it is kind of our job to be able to work in any scenario, but we have preferences.
Yeah.
And if you know your wedding is going to be XYZ, if everything is going to be indoors, for example, and your photographer is a natural light photographer,
Yeah.
huge red flag. You know that, you know, if you're, I mean, there's plenty of different examples. If you know that you're having an evening ceremony and it's going to be dark and your photographer hates using flash, well, that might be a problem.
Yeah, because there are some photographers that do not like to shoot with flash. So then in that case, if your wedding is all going to be indoors or at night or whatnot, they might not be the best fit for you.
Vice versa, if your wedding is like in a valley, completely outdoors, you know you're going to be exposed to the sun, and your photographer only shoots indoors or only shoots overcast, again, problem, right? So you kind of want to compare the variables about your wedding day that you know, and just try to like find ways of discovering if your photographer is going to align with that, right? These are good questions to like really cut to what actually matters on a wedding day. I think that's what it kind of comes down to, is like you going back to like backup cameras and backing up photos. None of those things actually matter to the work. Like they matter maybe from the business side of things. Like, yeah, you don't want somebody to lose your photos, so you should feel secure about that. Finding out how they light certain situations or how they prefer to work, or if they're going to be able to shoot in your ceremony space. These are things that really matter to your end result.
The next question is similar to, which is how do you deal with lighting conditions that are not ideal, which is a very important question because I don't know if there's been a wedding I've shot where it was like perfect lighting all day, right? Because you're like, yes, you're trying to get perfect, beautiful photos all day, but sometimes you're dealing with like candid moments that are not set up correctly with how you would want the lighting to be. So then you just got to go with it on the fly.
I have plenty of scenarios, I think, in my career where I've been, I was kind of expecting one thing and then you show up and like the weather completely changes or what have you.
Too.
And you're just fighting all day, and it can literally just be as simple as the wind's going the wrong way. You know?
I sometimes find there's like a cute moment happening, and if I had like directed the cute moment, I would have positioned them differently.
Right.
Or not even like between the couple, but say like in the morning during getting ready, I don't know, the mom gives the bride a gift or there's something like that, and I didn't like set up where everybody was going to stand for that photo, so then the lighting's not ideal, but I still want to capture that because it's a good moment. I find things like that can happen.
At the end of the day, moment matters more than light.
Exactly. And also I don't want my couple to feel like I'm just posing them the whole day. Like I want them to live and exist and have a normal day as well, where I'm not telling them where to stand every 5 seconds.
I think it's important just to throw that little curveball, when you're asking photographers or when you're kind of interviewing or preparing to potentially hire a photographer. It's just what they're like, how they approach that. If a photographer is, again, like I use like the natural light example, if you're like branded as a natural light photographer, all of your photos are really bright and outdoors. What happens when that photographer is forced, let's say it's raining and all of a sudden we have to take photos inside. You just want to know that your photographer is comfortable with if things change, right? Because they often do.
Myself, I'm a big off-camera flash shooter. I love
Me too.
to do off-camera flash, which I don't know. Because I do video as well, so sometimes I'll work with photographers. I don't see a lot of people that I've worked with doing off-camera flash the way that I do it. So
yeah, I mean, as somebody who likes off-camera flash as well, and I do a lot of it as well, I am of the mind that I think every photographer should be capable of doing it, if it's their preference or not. But you should know how to do that. I think it's not a big ask for your photographer to understand the basics of using flash, because there are scenarios. We've all had them where it was supposed to be this, it ended up being this, and, like I said, it rains and all of a sudden we have to do everything inside. If you're just, don't have the capabilities of adjusting and using the tools that should be at your disposal, you could have a subpar result.
Like say it's raining, you have to do family photos inside now, your photographer's not prepared to use flash inside, then your photos aren't going to be maybe what you're envisioning.
Exactly. Number 5, how do you approach posing? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I think it's important, depending on, you as a couple. I get couples that really want a lot of direction. I feel awkward. You have to tell me everything to do. Or you have people that are naturally best to, kind of just stand roughly over there and just do you, and they'll be, kind of naturally fall into cute things, right? But I think it's important to ask and be prepared for going into a session or a wedding, just understanding how your photographer approaches posing. So some people are very hands-off. They'll say it, in their branding, where we don't pose anything. Everything is just natural. Maybe they do more like prompts and guiding. Or some people are completely hands-off photojournalistic style. I think you can often tell from a portfolio too. Like if every single photo in the portfolio is, the couple in like some dramatic pose with the dress perfectly laid out, that's probably a photographer that likes the fine art style where they are posing. I mean, not to say that they might not have, this is, only what's in their portfolio and they have plenty of other stuff, but that tells me that that's a photographer that prefers to pose, and versus somebody who, if you're looking at their photographer and it's a lot of movement, it's, laughing and not everything is perfectly placed and hair's all over the place. Well, that's probably a photographer that really likes to guide and prompt. And then if you have, a portfolio that's full of just like really photojournalistic black and white moments where nothing's really posed. So these are ways to obviously tell kind of their approach, but it's just a really easy question to ask. And I think most photographers would be happy to answer it.
Yeah, I would say I fall somewhere in the middle between like super posy and not posing at all. So you can also find a photographer that's like somewhere in between that too. So if you want the
100%.
best of both worlds, there's photographers that do that as well.
Absolutely.
What is your approach to editing? I think that's a good question. Just like maybe just to get it out in the open, what they do and what they don't. Maybe you as a couple are expecting the photographer to do complete airbrush of your skin and make sure every little thing is perfect. Or maybe you don't want that, and that is a photographer that tends to do a lot of editing. Same thing with like color grading. If you want everything to look exactly how it did on the day, some photographers, like I'm probably one that I'm a little heavy-handed with my editing. I do like a stylized look that is very unique to like me. I like that it's to me, it gives a little bit more of like a fine art feel, just to kind of pump things up a little bit, make it a little bit more cinematic. So, there's plenty of photographers that do that. There's plenty of photographers that, like just a very true to color or something that emulates what like a film camera would be, which is pretty true to color usually. So I think that's just a really good question to ask, something that photographers are always excited to talk about because they never get asked that. And we spend so much time editing and like we just wish somebody would ask, hey, how was editing? I know you just spent the last week in your editing cave, As a couple, if you asked how we approach things, we could probably talk for an hour about it. And I think it's a good thing to know as a client, just what to expect. And of course, looking at their portfolio beforehand is going to give you a pretty good idea of like the end result, but it's just a great question to ask.
Yeah, I think when I started out, I don't get this anymore, but when I started out, people would hire me and then expect me to change my editing style to what they wanted.
Right.
But I think that's just like, when you're starting out and not charging enough, and you're also still figuring out your style yourself. But now, for the most part, if you're looking on someone's Instagram, their portfolio, you can see what your photos are going to look like. And if you don't like that, then you should find someone that you like love their style.
Yeah, I mean, editing styles also, I think a lot of photographers will say that's always evolving. I know I tend to tweak mine as every year goes by. So it's just, again, it's a good question to ask just to see where the photographer's head's at that time in their career. If you're looking at their photos from 10 years ago, it might not be the same as they're doing it now, right?
That's very true. I was pretty warm a few years back, and this year I've really come back more to like a true white balance kind of color. So if you do look at photos that I took a couple years ago, they're not accurate to what I am doing now. So the next question on here, number 7, is what can we do to help?
I love this question. I love this question on so many levels because if I'm not saying a couple has ever asked me this, but if they did, I would be so excited to book them because that tells me that they're invested and they recognize that this is a collaborative thing. It's something that's needed is to really build a relationship quickly with your photographer. So whether that means just having those meetings and just building rapport and just letting your guard down as much as you can with a somewhat stranger, get to know them, read their website, just try to feel comfortable with them because the best photos happen when you're acting with your photographer as you would with your best friends. Like you're just completely yourself. So when the question, what can we do to help? That is, to me, the answer would be just trust and be ready to like be, I don't know if emotional is the right word, but be vulnerable, perhaps. That would be my answer. Do you have an answer? Like if a couple asked you what they can do to help make things great?
Yeah, very similar to you. I always tell people like picking your wedding photographer is pretty much like picking someone to marry. You want to look out for red flags. You want to let your guard down. You want to be vulnerable. You want to get to know them on a little bit more of a deeper level. But I also just want them to just feel comfortable with themselves and with each other. And I think that's what I love about photographing couples is that I'm photographing someone that is with the person who they are like ideally the most comfortable with in the entire world at that moment. So it's very exciting because I think you can like tap into that comfortable side really easily because they are with somebody that they love and that makes them feel comfortable already. So
Like, yeah, that's definitely the high level answer of the, what can we do to help? But there's also things like your photographer might want you to do things like fill out their questionnaires that they send you because there's important information in there. They might want you to, actually maybe think about what would be an important place to you for your engagement session. Like just many different things, like more like on a simple level. Like it's just nice when couples are involved in the process too. So, whether it be outfits or locations.
The other thing I love is when both of them are involved in the process too. I find
that's a hard thing to ask for, but that's a huge green flag.
Yeah, sometimes there's like one couple that's more involved or like one person from the couple that's more involved than the other or that I talk to more. But I love when both of them are involved and I get to know both of them like individually, but also how they interact together.
Photographers don't really like working with people that we feel like we're forcing them.
Yeah.
The biggest way you can help is just to be ready to be yourself and open up a little bit. You don't have to tell us like your deepest and darkest secrets, but you have to be willing to be yourself on the day, during a shoot, and just, we can't put a smile. Well, maybe we can if we're funny, but we can't force the moment. Like, it's funny. We often get lists like photo lists for the day, and Cheryl and I, my wife and I, we always kind of chuckle a little bit. We get a photo list for the day, and it's like photo of this thing happening and this thing happening and this thing happening. And we always look at it like, well, if it happens, we're going to get a photo of it. So are you asking us to make you do these things? Because if we have to make you do these things, it's fake. And I hate that.
Last summer, I had an existential crisis where I was like, if I wasn't at the wedding photographing stuff, how much of these activities would my couples be doing? And I got over it. And now I've like kind of found a balance. But I remember just feeling like everything I take pictures of is always like me directing the moment. And sometimes I just want the moment to happen and I'm just there capturing it.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely our jobs to guide things for the photos.
Oh, 100%.
We can't be too extreme, but I think we've all had weddings where it just really felt like a Pinterest checklist. And it's just a shame because I think looking back, even as soon as the next morning, I think some of those couples, I would imagine, would kind of have a moment of like, did yesterday even happen? That was so fast. It was it went by so quick, and all we did was a checklist of photos. And, to each their own. That if somebody wants to hire us to do specific photos, that is our job. But as somebody who sees a lot of weddings, I just always get a little just like sad for the couples that didn't really seem to have a chance to enjoy their day because they were too busy doing this, that, or the other thing, right? So I'm not sure, what was that question? What can we do to help?
How can we help? But I feel like it's transformed into another question
it's a good topic.
Of like, what makes you happy as a wedding photographer? And for me, it's like what you're saying, seeing couples that spent time with their family and friends on their wedding day and also spent time with each other on their wedding day and weren't just running around trying to make every moment perfect. The wedding day isn't like, I don't view the wedding day as a big photo shoot. I think that's what I learned from my existential crisis I had last year, was that I don't just want to make the wedding day a big photo shoot for my couples. I want it to also be their wedding, and I want them to enjoy the wedding part of it.
Everybody's heard it, the be present thing. And I think it's maybe because it's two words, it's just simple and it's hard to like really grasp the meaning of it sometimes, but it really is the biggest piece of advice anybody should really try to take when it comes to planning a wedding day. I mean, I've done the math, the average wedding cost, divide that up, like every hour of your day is costing you like thousands of dollars. Like don't waste it. Just like hang out, have fun, and let your photographer do your thing. If you hired the right photographer for you, you don't need to plan every little thing. Like
that's what I was going to circle back to, is if you have a good relationship with your wedding vendors before your wedding day, then you can actually be more present. because you trust them and you know that they understand your goals of your wedding day and they can like make those happen for you while you're just enjoying.
Question 8.
Alrighty.
What is the ideal schedule for you based on my wedding day timeline? I think the key thing here is based on my wedding day timeline. So, you know, you have your day, however it's structured. A lot of them tend to be kind of similar, but some are different. And I think it's just good to know that your photographer is happy with that timeline. Some photographers ask for a certain amount of time for photos. Some don't need as much. And I think it's just good to make sure that your photographer is like totally chill with how things are laid out and they don't have any issues with being able to get what you want based on time restraints.
Whenever I'm meeting with couples for the first time, sometimes it's like a year or more from their wedding, so they don't always know the nailed down timeline. But I do kind of paint them a picture of a potential timeline and like where I'll be on the wedding day, what I'll be doing and all that stuff.
And then I guess this kind of goes right into the next question, but just asking your photographer how much time they need for, let's say, like the formal portraits or just for different things. Like if you have specific photo requests, like a sparkler exit or something like that, just knowing how much time they need to do that, because it is going to vary by photographer. Some people take more time to maybe make everything a certain way. Others just, shoot on the fly. It's just really good. It's a good conversation to have. Because I shoot off camera flash, sometimes I'll be wandering around setting things up like with, flashes on stands, and I'm dialed in for a specific thing, let's say speeches.
Yeah.
And then somebody taps you on the shoulder and expects you to take a photo right there. And you're not dialed in. I mean, for me, I kind of flag down Cheryl, my wife, who is usually set up for like the just kind of run and gun stuff in that scenario. But just understanding that like things do take time. You want to do family photos in this particular spot. Let's say it requires flash. Well, it's not going to be a quick snapshot. I actually have to like set up my lights and then take them down. So just understanding that certain things do take time. We don't have just magic boxes in our hands that make everything great. It's not the tool, it's the person. And, sometimes to achieve certain looks, it requires certain techniques or time.
One thing I've started doing this year is just encouraging my couples to just book me for like 10, 12 hours minimum. Like I think I'll go for less if it fits the wedding, but like my minimum package is 10 hours just because I hate going up to my couple at their reception at like 9:00 and saying, hey, like my time's up.
On this topic, this is a total like side thing.
Yeah, it is.
I tell every person that will listen, when it comes to planning your wedding and reception stuff, make it go fast. Like so many, like if you're at a wedding with a wedding planner, it always goes like that. And there's a reason for it. When you have, let's say, a DIY wedding, nobody's really in charge. You got a drunk MC that's supposed to kind of follow a thing, and they do one thing, and then let's take a 20-minute break.
Let's take a break.
Do
It's
one
like
thing.
a 40-minute break.
What ends up happening is it kills the flow. I'm hoping that I speak to like at least one couple out there who's about to plan their wedding and listening to this. It kills the flow of the reception. People have been sitting at their tables waiting for dinner. Maybe the bar is closed. They're getting antsy. And the longer that goes on, the more people either get drunk and rowdy, which I've definitely seen. They get bored and disinterested. So by the time the slideshow comes on, nobody's paying attention, or the speeches, nobody's paying attention because they've been sitting there forever. Get all of your formalities for your reception done in a perfectly nice, like imagine a play. You don't have a 20-minute break every 5 minutes. Just try and have a nice flow. Obviously have a break here and there to go to the washroom and what have you. But the biggest kind of like downside of taking too many breaks, we get it. As a couple, as a bridal party, you've been stuck at this head table. You had your ceremony. You haven't had a chance to see everybody. So you kind of want to take those breaks to go say hi to this person and that person. I'm just going to go grab a drink. And, by the time your formalities are done, it's 11:00. Yeah. Now you have like an hour and a half to actually see everybody, versus when you kind of just bang those things out all one after the other. You should be done everything by 9:00, and then you have the rest of the night to like actually
visit everybody.
And not to mention you paid for a DJ. The DJ's sitting there ready to kick the party off, but it's like you can't until you've done your first dances, things like that. It just, yeah, I think it's one of the most important things is planning the reception flow and making it feel really natural. Like a natural kind of flow, as if it's like a show you're attending for your guest. It's important for the guest experience.
Because I find you're right.
Yeah.
If there's a wedding planner or a wedding coordinator, things do go on a schedule, which is nice. It's nice for me. When there's no wedding coordinator, I do semi take on the role of trying to coordinate a little bit and making sure, like, I'll go up to my couple and be like, okay, are we doing cake cutting next? Like, if we have had that 20-minute break, I will go up to them and just check in with them and make sure that, because like you said, even if I'm there all night, I still want them to have time to visit with everybody. And when I see those like 20-minute random breaks happening that were not planned, I'm like, let's get things going so we can you guys can just enjoy.
Well, actually, so on that point, so the selfish part of me, the reason I like that things flow a certain way for the photography is I'm lighting for these formalities.
This is very true. It's also, you're
so
right.
if I'm set up for speeches or for first dance, I am locked into that. I can't so easily actually go and shoot the candid stuff.
Yeah.
So I love it when those things just flow and I can go into party mode and I'm ready to shoot anything and I can spend the rest of the time just capturing whatever's happening. That's my selfish reason for hoping that happens, but really it's guest experience. I think guest experience is something that nobody ever talks about. And I think it's really important because when the guests are having fun, it makes for a great party. And also the sooner you get past all that stuff, like I know it's a pain, like you've kind of, as a couple, you've been like shuttled, like kind of herded through these different things. Okay, now it's ceremony, now it's this, now it's this. You finally get to relax. So you want that. Just do that extra hour.
Just get your speeches done, cake cutting, first dances, exactly. Bam, bam, bam. That's good advice.
And then you're off the hook and you can finally just go and enjoy yourself, right?
Yeah. Question 10 I have here, which is what excites you about my wedding? So this is the couple asking the photographer what makes them excited about their wedding.
I think if you were to ask your photographer that and they say, I don't know, pretty good sign.
These are tough questions. Like if a couple pulled these out on me in our first meeting, I would have to pause for a second and think about my answer to make sure it sounds okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point too, is like I kind of putting these together was thinking, like, what are the questions that would actually maybe stump me or stump a photographer who is not very experienced? Like, I really think that these are a great tool for couples to like really cut to the core of a photographer a little bit. But I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be looking for some amazing, like, oh, couldn't imagine shooting anything else.
Yes,
but just
exactly.
as simple as like, I'm going to think about my couple last night. If they asked me that, I would say, I love the venue you're at. It's in September. September is like one of my favorite months to shoot in. We always have great lighting. They told me that they're getting ready. They want to do a first touch, like instead of a first look. Awesome. I don't get to do that very often. Yeah. That'll be super fun. So just like, it just kind of shows you that your photographer's listening and you're not just a number. Yeah. Do you want to read number 11?
Sure. Number 11 is, would you like us to give you examples of what we like? Which I do actually find that people ask me this question. Sometimes I feel like people ask me this question because they assume that I like need reference photos to do my job, but reference photos for me are always optional. Like I do want to see what you like and hit some of the poses. Like if you see a pose on Pinterest, you're like, I need this on my wedding day. I want to make sure we get that. But you also don't have to send me reference images either.
I look at this question as an alternative to, can I give you a shot list?
Yeah.
Shot list can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Sometimes that's a Pinterest board of a bunch of different photographers' best photo they've ever taken in their entire career. And they want you to get all of these, even though half of them were in a different season.
Yes.
That one's in Italy. This one, like it just doesn't make sense. If a couple were to ask me this question, I would say, please do, because I think non-photographers have a really hard time communicating what they like about something.
I agree.
So what I'd love is if a couple's going to hire me, I assume that they like my work. So I would say, like, if you could, or if you'd like to, send me the photos that you like that I've done, because then I can tell what it is they're coming to me for. They could send photos of themselves that they like. We can kind of reverse engineer or dissect what photos they like of themselves based on certain things or color tones or what have you. So all of this is to say, instead of asking, can we give you a shot list? Ask if you can give them examples of what you like. The keyword being examples versus shot list. Shot list says to me that these are the things I have to get.
Yeah.
Examples mean these are the things I like.
Yeah.
Can you get something that is similar?
Similar, yeah.
Which is a subtle but a big difference in our world.
For me, I want couples that aren't just like checking off, yep, we have our wedding photographer, we've hired someone, that box is covered. Like, I want it to be deeper than that. I want us to be able to create art together, like what you were saying. It's a collaborative effort. And I want us to get to know each other too.
Yeah, for the non-photographers that might be hearing this and saying like, oh, why are photographers so picky? Just be happy we hired you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The reason isn't what you said. It's the work is so much better when there's a vibe, when there's a click. Mm-hmm. I didn't get into this industry to get rich. Sure, it'd be nice, but it's not really, like we do this because we like doing it. It's a lot more fun when you like what you do, and when you're getting good stuff and you're working with people who appreciate it and kind of give you that creative license to be creative with them.
Okay, you can read question number 12. So this is Joel's last and final question that you should be asking your wedding photographer.
Yes. How do you stay inspired and how do you avoid burnout? I think if somebody asking me this 5 or 6 years ago, my answer would be, I don't get burnt out. I'm always good to go.
Yeah.
I was lying because I never experienced burnout.
Yeah.
A photographer who understands what taking too much means and knowing their limits is a photographer who actually is really connected to their work and to themselves. Yeah, I think the answer you want to hear from that question is just something that indicates that they're going to be caring for themselves and showing up ready for your wedding, and you're not just another number.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these questions really come down to the answer is, are you just another number, or is this photographer invested in my day?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that these questions help couples determine if they are hiring an experienced photographer or not, and I would agree with that. Because if they are experienced, they will be able to answer these questions and you'll feel comfy with their answers. This is going to be so awkward now if someone hits us with these questions in our next meeting. Please do not ask us these questions. I'll have my answers ready.
Yeah.
No, I like these questions because they make it more of a conversation rather than a transaction, right?
Well, it also just gets past the surface level stuff.
Yeah,
I think what I said at the top of this is, sometimes we'll just get hit with the list where it's like the 5 questions, like the backups, what do you do if you're sick? And I'm happy to answer those questions, but I always get this feeling in your soul where you're like, you could ask me so much more. Mm-hmm. Like this stuff doesn't matter. Whether I have a backup camera or how I decide to back up your files after means absolutely nothing to how I'm actually going to shoot your day or if we're going to get along. And I think it's not people's fault. I think, again, non-photographers don't understand the subtleties to what we do, which, acts to our advantage, I guess, because when you're really good at the subtleties of what we do, that's what sets you apart. But when people think we're just a hired camera, like a hired expensive camera, and everything's going to be magic, it's really not the case. It's probably good photography skills are probably the least important skill to wedding photography.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's really not about that. I mean, I can take a perfect picture of a bored couple.
Yeah.
That's not going to look very good. I could take a crappy picture of a couple having a really, really good time and being themselves, and you'll be able to tell the difference and which one's better.
These questions are amazing. I really appreciate you coming on, Joel. I think this is going to help a lot of people when it comes to planning, and it's just going to, I love the way that you've come in to the industry with Canadian wedding photographers, and it's changing the community and the landscape of the industry. Just like these questions, they're going to help people build a deeper connection with their photographer and help them find photographers that maybe they're better suited with.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of my hope too. I mean, with Canadian wedding photographers, I mean, that was kind of born out of just this isolation feeling. My wife and I work together, so we do have each other. But even Canada, we're one country, but we're huge. We're spread out.
Yeah.
The individual markets like Winnipeg, Calgary, there's not a lot of communication there. We're also like isolated. I just want to build something that really like elevated our industry and celebrated the wins, celebrated like great work, and then we can learn from each other and make each other better, and hopefully overall just elevate an industry that sometimes gets cheapened, sometimes gets devalued. I just want to build like a newfound respect for the craft. Not that it's lacking necessarily, but just coming together and really just, again, elevating each other, lifting each other up.
I think it's amazing work that you're doing. So I want you to share with people where they can find you if they want to get connected with you.
Yeah, so, Black and Gold Photography, we're based in Winnipeg. It's my wife and I. blackandgoldphotography.com, and then canadianweddingphotographers.com. If you are a photographer looking to join the community, jump on board. And if you're a couple kind of perusing photographers, it's a great place to start. We have over 100 members across the country, all absolutely fantastic.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you for coming on the podcast today. I think these are great questions that are going to help people. So,
yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right, we'll see you guys in the next episode.